What if I told you that the reason you feel everything so deeply isn't just who you are, but a survival mechanism you developed before you could even speak? Stay with me, because what Carl Jung discovered about childhood wounds will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about being an empath. Carl Jung said that the first 6 years of life shaped the entire architecture of the psyche. And for empaths, something happened during those formative years that changed everything. Something most people don't talk about. Something that created both your greatest gift and your deepest wound. Here's what most empaths don't realize. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll finally understand why you've carried this weight for so long. According to Carl Jung, every child needs what he called mirroring. They need to see themselves reflected back through loving eyes. They need to know that their emotions matter, that their presence is valued, that they are enough exactly as they are. But here's where it gets devastating, and why understanding this will set you free. For the empath, this mirroring was disrupted. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable. Maybe you grew up in a home where feelings were dismissed or punished. Maybe you learned early that your role was to manage other people's emotions while suppressing your own. Jung called this the original wound, and it doesn't just hurt you once. It shapes your entire relationship with yourself and others for decades. Listen carefully to what happens next, because this is where everything starts to make sense. Carl Jung discovered that children are natural psychologists. They read the emotional atmosphere like others read books. And if that atmosphere is unstable, if there's anger, addiction, depression, or chaos, the child doesn't have the option to leave. So they adapt. They become hypervigilant. They learn to sense danger before it arrives. They develop what Jung termed extraordinary emotional sensitivity, not as a gift, but as a survival tool. This is where your empathy was born. Not in love, but in fear. You learned to read micro-expressions because you needed to know if mom was having a good day or a bad day. You learned to absorb other people's emotions because someone had to regulate the household. You learned to silence your own needs because expressing them felt dangerous. Jung understood that these children become what he called emotional caretakers before they even understand what emotions are. And this pattern, it doesn't just disappear when you grow up. Here's what will absolutely blow your mind about what happens next. According to Carl Jung, the psyche has an incredible ability to recreate familiar patterns. He called this repetition compulsion. The empath who learn to sacrifice themselves for a parent's stability will unconsciously seek relationships where they can repeat this dynamic. Not because they want to suffer, but because it feels familiar. It feels like love. You attract the unavailable partner because unavailability was your first experience of love. You pour yourself into people who can't reciprocate because that's what you learned love required. You believe that your worth is measured by how much you can give, how much you can heal, how much you can endure. Jung discovered that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. But here's where the transformation begins, and it changes everything. Carl Jung said that the wound that has been unconscious must eventually become conscious to heal. For empaths, this moment usually comes after yet another betrayal, yet another one-sided relationship, yet another experience of being drained dry. The pain becomes so intense that you can't ignore it anymore. And this pain, Jung understood, is actually your psyche screaming for attention. It's saying, stop, look at what you're doing. This pattern didn't start with them. It started long before. This is what Jung called the return to the origin. And it's absolutely terrifying and absolutely necessary. Here's what most people miss about childhood wounds. They think healing means understanding what happened. But Jung discovered something far more profound. Healing means grieving what didn't happen. The empath must grieve the childhood they didn't have, the safety they deserved but never received, the unconditional love that should have been their birthright, the freedom to just be a child without carrying adult responsibilities. Jung said that we cannot heal what we do not feel. And this grief, this is where the real work begins. According to Carl Jung, there's a specific stage in psychological development he called the confrontation with the inner child. For empaths, This confrontation is particularly intense because that inner child has been abandoned twice. First by the parent who couldn't meet their needs, and second by the adult they became who continued the pattern by abandoning themselves for others. The awakened empath must turn inward and finally ask the question they've been avoiding their entire life. What do I actually need? Not what does everyone else need from me? Not how can I fix this situation? Not what will make them love me? But what do I need? This simple question, Jung discovered, is revolutionary for someone who has spent their entire existence attending to others. But here's the part that will send chills down your spine. Carl Jung understood that the child who was forced to become an adult too soon often struggles to access their authentic desires as an adult. They've been so focused on external validation, on being needed, on preventing abandonment, that they have no idea who they actually are beneath all that performance. The healing empath must do something that feels impossible. They must learn to disappoint people. They must learn that no is a complete sentence. They must learn that their worth is not conditional on their usefulness. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, not who you had to be to survive. And here's where the psychology gets absolutely fascinating. According to Carl Jung, every wound contains within it the seed of a gift. The empath's childhood wound created their extraordinary sensitivity, but that same wound also created their compulsive caregiving, their boundary issues, their inability to receive. True healing doesn't mean losing your empathy, it means reclaiming it. It means choosing consciously where you direct that gift, instead of compulsively giving it to anyone who seems to need it. Jung discovered that the healed empath becomes what he called the wounded healer, someone who understands pain intimately, but no longer identifies with it. Someone who can hold space for others without losing themselves. Someone who has learned the hardest lesson of all. You cannot heal anyone who doesn't want to heal themselves. The final transformation is what Jung called integration. It's absolutely magnificent. Carl Jung said that wholeness comes not from perfection, but from embracing all parts of ourselves. The empath must integrate the part of them that was forced to be strong with the part that desperately needed to be held. The part that learned to give endlessly with the part that is allowed to receive. The adult who can protect with the child who still needs protection. This integration doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small moments of choosing yourself. It happens when you finally say, I matter too. It happens when you stop trying to earn love and start expecting it as your baseline. It happens when you realize that people who truly love you won't require you to abandon yourself to keep them. Jung discovered that the most powerful moment in healing is when someone stops asking, why did this happen to me? And starts asking, who am I becoming because of this? The childhood wound that created the empath doesn't disappear, but it transforms. It becomes wisdom. It becomes discernment. It becomes the ability to love deeply while maintaining sacred boundaries. This is the journey from wounded child to sovereign adult, from compulsive giver to conscious chooser, from emotional sponge to emotional warrior. And according to Carl Jung's lifetime of research, this transformation isn't just possible, it's your birthright. The empath who heals their childhood wound doesn't become less sensitive. They become more selective. They don't stop caring. They start caring for themselves with the same fierce devotion they once reserved for others. They realize that the greatest act of healing isn't fixing everyone around them. It's finally, after all these years, coming home to themselves.